Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today we are going to continue in the HIVE CMS User Learning Series talking about content details. I'm going to try and cover everything that you need to know about content details as it relates to Revit content, regular content, AutoCAD content. I'm going to try and talk about all of it so that today you get to see all the details that are available when looking at information about anything that you've discovered inside of HIVE. As always, of course, these webinars are recorded, and also, as always, if you have questions, we encourage you, when you're participating with us live here, we encourage you to throw those questions into the QA window in GoToWebinar, and I try to answer them live while we're talking through the topic. And we also save a QA session for the end in case you have questions that perhaps are unrelated to today's topic. All right, so let's kind of cover today's topic. You searched in HIVE, you found what you think is the correct content, but is it really what you're looking for? It's always a good idea to be absolutely certain you know that what you're about to load into your design environment is what you want to load into your design environment. So we're going to take a look at the HIVE Details panel, which can show you quite a bit of information. It's way more than just a preview image and a file name. This is actually the inner details of the content itself. And we're going to take a look at all the detailed parameters for basically all types and variations of any kind of piece of content. And we can do this really on demand without ever needing to open up the individual files themselves one by one, which is what we would normally need to do if we wanted to know about the content we're about to load. So we're going to basically dig deep and take a look at that today and understand how you can really understand more about your content prior to loading it. So we're going to take a look at how to access the details panel. We're going to take a look also at some of the common controls in the details panel. We're going to look at file and type data and also search within the type data for specific pieces of information. So all of that is what we're going to try to cover a bit today in this discussion. And since I'm not big on death by PowerPoint, we're going to just jump in live and take a look at how to access this. Now, if you're using HIVE yourself, you can absolutely have your HIVE session open today, and you can follow along with everything that I am doing, pretty much. You might have different content you're going to click on, but you should be able to follow along if you want to. So I happen to have HIVE already open here. And from my home tab, I had gone to my saved searches over here, and I'd already run a search for my CTC doors. This is the same thing as just running a search for something, and I've filtered it down. In my case today, I'm looking at Revit categories, specifically focusing on Revit doors. And so this is showing me all the doors in my Revit content library that I've curated for my team. Now, I'm signed in also today as an end user, as Joe, my typical Joe Demo end user here. And I'm currently kind of viewing my content in the way that I typically would see it, which is in a tile view representation. We talked about different view styles earlier. I have my preview image set up to be as small as it can be and as width-wise, but as tall as it can be height-wise. It's kind of pretty much where I'm at there in that balance. And I can see, a bunch of stuff out here. But now I want to know more about a particular door, like perhaps this swing double door here or this swing double door over here. I want to know if they are the doors that I think I'm looking for. So by name and perhaps by preview graphic, it's kind of dark because the materials in this particular family are dark and they have a black material surface. These ones over here perhaps are a little easier to see, though it is showing the wall and I can't really see it in perspective. But I think this is the door that I want. So about that, if I click on the details panel right here, this is where you can expand and contract the details panel. I can start to see some information, some additional information about my current selection over here, which happens to be my swing single door. That's what's currently selected. So that's how you can access the details panel. There's simply the button here on the top of HIVE where you can open and close that details panel just by simply clicking that button. Now let's talk a little bit about navigating what exists inside the details panel. This way you'll know kind of what is available to you. So within the details panel itself, if I was to collapse everything that's available here, you'll notice 4 major sections in my details panel today. There's a reviews area. You may or may not be able to leave reviews depending on your rights to libraries, but you can see reviews that have been left by others if they've had rights or previous reviews. We have talked about reviewing content in a previous session that's been recorded, and this also is in the details panel where you can modify your review or delete your review if you want. You can update the star ratings, you can update, in this case, what your description says about your rating as well. You can see if there happens to be any attachments associated to a piece of content. So this piece of content may have additional cut sheets. It might have installation guides. It might have, I don't know, other data about it, maybe spec sections associated, maybe typical Revit details associated. There's all kinds of things that can be associated to a piece of content, and those would typically appear here in the attachments. Also, there's the general file properties about something. So in this case, the library or libraries that it's associated to, associated tags, whether or not this particular piece of content is cloud hosted or is local only, who added it and when it was last updated and by whom. And then down below, this next little section is custom to the type of content that I've clicked on. So this being a piece of Revit content, I will see Revit properties here. If I was selecting AutoCAD content or a general file, I would see their properties in this lower section. But in this case, with this being a Revit family, when I expand it out, I see Revit specific stuff like Revit category and its units of measure, the version associations of this file. In this case, this is exclusively uploaded for 2018, though I can use it in any future version if I want to. There's other content that might exist inside of here that might have multiple versions of Revit files associated. So I've got a 2017 version in this case and a 2020 version of the file. And depending on which one I select on will sort of determine which of the next options I see down below. Selecting nothing will give me all of the types across all versions, but picking a particular version here will give me types that relate directly to that Revit version. And then selecting on a particular type will further expand in the Revit space some extra information about the parameters and the values associated to the parameters. So in navigating this window, there's a lot of information that's available here. You can either collapse or expand it. That's totally up to you. This one has no attachments. This one over here does, so I could expand or collapse that too if I really cared to. But all of this information is really there at your fingertips to leverage while you're selecting a piece of content. All right. So let's take a look a little bit more at some of that discrete type data that is available content type sort of by content type. I'm not going to pick on every different content type because there's really 3 major sections. There's Revit content, there's AutoCAD content, and there's all of the other files that exist. And so we'll find some of each of those to pick on here. So if I was to select Revit content, we've already seen some of the properties that exist there and the fact that I can click through discrete types within there and see the data that relates to the discrete type information. I'm also going to run here a search for, let's see, I don't have another good search for what I wanted to find next. So what I will do is turn off my filters for this content. Just clear it all out. I could have just hit clear as well, but I'm going to search for shared, like shared coordinates. And so I have a PDF that's sitting out here. This PDF will tell me information about the shared coordinates document. So once again, there's reviews, there's attachments. This time, however, there's just content properties. There's no extra data about this particular file that is searchable. So it's the name, the who uploaded it, what libraries it's a part of, and if there's any tags. So the vast majority of Windows files will have this setup here where there's not a lot of sub data that's available. Let me run a search here for, say, some AutoCAD content. I have some AutoCAD Civil 3D content that I've uploaded from my out-of-the-box library over here, and perhaps that's all I want to show. So if I simply show just the true AutoCAD content in that library, it'll find me a bunch of items. For example, in this case, I've got, I don't know, this table style right here. And when looking at this, I can see, again, the libraries and the content properties here, but now I'm also seeing AutoCAD properties as well. In this case, alignment table styles spiral. So it's very specific to a certain category of object. It's actually the same categories of objects that I can filter to over here, but it tells me that in the details. And it's also showing me here the properties about that object. There's not a lot in this particular item that gives me a lot of properties, but I can see who created it and when, and who modified it and when. This is coming out of the AutoCAD file itself. Okay. So one really important note about all of this detail over here, and a question that I commonly get asked is, these details, these properties, how much of this is automatic and how much of this is manual? Absolutely everything that I've shown today so far is automatically harvested from the content when you process it, with the exception of the tags, which are subjectively associated to content, and the libraries, which are also subjectively associated to content. Those two things admins of the Hive environment control, but everything else about these properties are just automatically there. If there's a property that can be read, it's being read, and it's available in the properties window over here for searching. So when I go back to my doors search that I ran earlier and I selected my swing single door, this search over here with all these properties and all of these types, all of this data is 100% automatically harvested from the family, or in the case of Revit content, if there's a type catalog sitting next to it, it's the type catalog data as well that it harvests and makes available. So when I select this and I'm seeing all this assembly code data and all this information, it's all automatic. There's nothing manual that admins have to do. You as end users, when you're searching for content and you select it, you can know that this is the information that is 100% in the latest version of that file, and it's automatically being harvested and made available. So now let's talk about the final major topic here, which is searching some of that extra data, because there's a lot of information inside of there that you might want to know about, and perhaps looking at these huge property sets that show up might just be a bit much. So I want to give an example that makes perhaps a bit more sense than my genericized door content here. What I'm going to do is get rid of the doors filter, and I'm going to search here. Actually, I'm going to get rid of my libraries filter as well, and I'm going to search up here for a product that's actually a manufactured product. So I'm going to search for Titus. This is going to search across my thousands upon thousands of pieces of content, AutoCAD, Revit, Word docs, everything. And it's going to come back with the 65 items in my entire collection of all libraries. That's Revit content in this case, because I did filter for exclusively Revit content. But it's going to go find me from all that content stuff that somehow matches Titus. Now, I want to point something out here. Notice how, say, for example, this return modular slot diffuser round neck.rfa. It says absolutely nothing about Titus, and yet it showed up in my list. In fact, the only thing that shows anything in this about Titus is the material that's called out as the aluminum Titus material. But if I select on, say, this diffuser right here, let's take a look at how we can actually search through some of the data and how Hive is always automatically searching this data. And so we can kind of see where this is coming from. So I did a generic search on Titus, and it found me this, but the file name wasn't where it found that information. In fact, if I go over here and start taking a look at some of these family types, if I scroll down inside of here, I'll see Titus show up inside the air terminal type selector for Titus. Or if I scroll down further, it has the table name of Titus. Or if I scroll down even further yet, down into the M's, there it is, manufacturer is Titus, right? So it searched through all of the data in my library, and it found the fact that Titus matched this piece of content because of a property that it discovered automatically inside that piece of content. Now, a nice thing that you can do if you go to the parameters, at least in the case of Revit here, you yourself can search Titus and see what shows up. And it's going to show me, in this case, all of the properties in the family that somehow match Titus. This one's got quite a few. It's got a web parameter. It's got a whole bunch of type lookups. It's got product pages. It's got all kinds of data that matches Titus. So that's why it was so, quote unquote, relevant and floated to the surface, was because of the data inside of it that matched Titus. These others may have data like that as well. They probably do. And it's probably another manufacturer property plus a bunch of others. But that's something that Hive does. When I search Titus at the top level, it'll find it. And then if I want to know where in the family, I can always search its properties when that's available to see that as well. And I can search type by type by type if I want to see what the properties are for each of the types inside of there, if I really care to go that far. And again, I can filter for specific Revit versions and see which version has which properties. There's all kinds of things you can do here because the data is all available. You just have to start to dig a little bit to understand it. And all that said, just so you can know that when you're searching for something, that it's actually the right model. Now within here, if I was looking for, I don't know what other property I might really care about. Maybe I'm looking for something that has a 6-inch property on it. I'm looking maybe for a neck size or something. Yeah, here's neck size at 6-inch. Maybe some of these don't have that particular property. I don't know. And so I can figure out which one actually has that 6-inch value. This one does. This one here probably does as well. Yeah, I guess all of these have a default neck size of 6-inch to start with. So, I could use any of these 5 depending on what I'm looking for. Maybe I want to know about the slot size, and I could figure that out as well. But that's a part of the type name, so I could search for that if I wanted to in the type search field. Regardless, this data can all be searched before you even load the family in, so you know exactly what it is you're looking for. Okay, so with all of that, we're about to transition into questions and answers real quick here in case there's extra questions. Now's a perfect time to start throwing those questions into the QA window there. But for now, for those of you who don't like to hang out for the Q&A session, I want to say thank you. We always appreciate when you show up live for these webinars and have the opportunity to interact with us. We feel that it gives you a lot of value. It certainly makes it more interesting for us. So thank you for that. Certainly pay attention to our events page on our ctcsoftware.com website, where you can go and always be aware of any upcoming webinars that might be of interest to you. All of the next 3 months are all posted there, so you should be able to go find all those webinars and kind of see some topics that you might find interesting. We hope that certainly you're able to better leverage Hive both as an end user and also understand as an admin how your end users can leverage this for filtration, which might give you some really good strategies on how to set up your content for future use. So thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you in future CTC webinars. Have a fantastic day.